How's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday night, 10:04 p.m. California time here, October 22nd, 2025. It is the Earthmaster out here. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Wednesday evening. Latest activity here on the earthquake map here for the USGS shows a 5.2 earthquake within the last, that's just about ready to drop off the last hour here across Port Moresby, New Guinea region. For a 5.2. Looking at the earthquake 3D globe here, newer activity here in the white ring shows a pretty decent uptick here across my voice, across the Kamchatka area of Russia. Look at that. Got a swarm of activity stirring up here into this region of Russia, including a 5.6. This earthquake here, the 5.6 originally coming in as a 5.9. Followed up quickly by a 4.6, but there's definitely what looks like a swarm of activity stirring up there in that area of Russia. Of course, that's where the 8.8 earthquake struck. That, an 8.8, that's nothing to disregard. That was a pretty decent earthquake back in July, a mega quake that was worth coming. That obviously that was due. It was due when it comes to the amount of time that has passed since the last big earthquake in that area. So still seeing some aftershock activity there. Not really too concerned with further large-scale movement in that area. I am further concerned, though, with the area down across the Nankai Trough towards Japan, or towards Taiwan, excuse me. So that obviously that's an area to watch pretty closely there. But when things are increasing there across the Kamchatka area, when we're seeing further aftershock activity, it doesn't mean that, things are dying down in that area. That's a sign here of increasing pressure in the area. So therefore, we're seeing further escalation of earthquake activity. That's a misconception that people tend to, perceive as it's a negligent thing there. If you really think about it, right? A lot of people tend to think that, activity out there across Russia is backing off here finally. It's finally backing off. But why are we seeing aftershock activity? Right? Think about that. So 5.6, 5.9, doesn't matter what it is. If we're seeing an increase in earthquake activity out there, it's not a sign of pressure relieving out there. It's a sign of increasing pressure, increasing the earthquakes out there. That's it's unfortunately a misconception a lot of people tend to leave college with, leave high school with. It doesn't matter. It's just it's not a good concept to think about. It's just that's not what happens out there when we see earthquake activity. Earthquake activity is a sign of increasing pressure in the region wherever it's taking place there. Take a look at this cluster, and this is a prime example here around the middle, the Caribbean plate here, right? Look at that activity around the Middle America Trench, over here across Puerto Rico, and down through the Per Chile Trench here. A big uptick in earthquake activity here. These are all white rings here indicating some newer earthquake activity here in the last couple hours. That's a pretty big uptick there. That is not unnoticed. Let me tell you, that's a decent amount of earthquake activity stirring up here across the area in a short time period. Now, the USGS, if you were to look at this map, you'd think, wow, everything's hunky-dory out there across the South America area. And that's why, it's very important to pay attention to not only the USGS, but also multi-agency reporting systems out here. I have the combination here of the USGS and the EMSC data that shows us the smaller quakes there that the USGS is not reporting. And without that, this globe would look absent here in this area. And that's, I strictly am in concrete, set in concrete here to report other than the USGS agency here. It's very important to watch what's going on out here. And there's a swarm of activity, Per Chile Trench up into the Costa Rica area. It's been swarming up there off the coast of Costa Rica where that 5-pointer struck here recently. Let me show you guys here in the last 7 days. Near 6-pointer up there off the coast of Costa Rica here recently. That is just to the southwest of San Jose, Costa Rica, roughly about 30 miles or so to the southwest. Now, this area is the extreme southern end. Let me show you guys here. The extreme southern end of the Middle America Trench here. It's a subduction zone. There's no reason why the oceanic crust would look like that down here unless this plate is diving underneath this area to the east, okay? This is not just for pictures. This is where big earthquakes can take place. The Costa Rica area definitely can see some big earthquake activity. The amount of swarming that's stirring up out here in the area is highly concerning, because it's pointing towards maybe some larger activity out here. Middle America Trench, roughly about the northern end, southward here, all along the towards the center portion of the Peru-Chile Trench, eastward. That's a decent amount of earthquake uptick here. So it would make sense here to watch this area in between here. See that area across North America, or the northern end of South America, Venezuela. We're talking about Colombia, Panama City. This area is absent in earthquake activity, but we got movement happening all around it. Don't ignore this area right here. That's a major plate boundary, and when things are stirring up like this, it's common sense here to watch this area very closely in between this region. So just I'm pointing that out just in case something major happens overnight. We don't see this elevated earthquake event happen like this for no reason here. There's something bigger brewing out here. So watch this area south, and also maybe potentially I need to get another mouse pad here. That sounds like a good thing here. Anyone want to send me a mouse pad? Northern area here as well. Watch this region around the Caribbean. Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet for now. Mediterranean, just typical movement out there. And as you can see here, obviously some earthquake activity up there around the Kamchatka area. The majority of the newer movement here is, you don't have to have a neon orange vest to see the hazard out here. There's a lot of uptick going on across this area of the planet right now. Let's go ahead and check the area across California, the West Coast, see what's going on out here. Earlier this afternoon, we had a 3.1 Westmoreland area. That is right smack dab on the Brawley seismic zone, 7 miles underneath this area. No further escalation out here for now, but that is the second three-pointer out here in the last 24 hours. So, well, you know what? Let's see here. I'll stand by. I was looking at 2.7 down there across Fontana area. That was earlier this afternoon. But there's a 3.1. There's a 3.2. Much further up north and away from this area. But if you compare the two distance-wise here, right, that's a couple hundred miles here. For us little ants here on the planet, we're just a couple ants here on the planet, okay? I don't mean to degrade the human concept of things, but when it comes to plate tectonics out here, we absolutely mean nothing when it comes to plate movement out here. So this little hop, skip, and a jump here is a sign that increasing pressure out here across the plate boundary is occurring. All right, I don't care what anyone says here. There is a relationship between what happened here earlier this morning and the newer activity here, and the middle point boundary around Riverside as well. Increasing pressure is happening out here. I don't like it when they say that, well, this is not related to the activity down south here. Well, technically it is on a bigger scheme, a bigger scale of things. When the plate moves out here, folks, Well, the Mother Nature is going to tell us little ants out here that your little thinking here is wrong. There's a big relationship when the plate moves out here along the North American and the Pacific plate. So right now, the increasing pressure is out here across this area of the. It's just a little tiny, and it's funny. It's a little tiny portion of the Pacific plate. That doesn't mean anything. This thing could easily produce an 8.1 and wipe out a lot of population out here. I don't want to see it happen, but that's our realistic view. You know, humans tend to think, oh, we control the plates. No, we don't control the plates out here. The plates control our livelihood out here. There's fracture boundaries because of the strain out here. Look at all the fracture boundaries out here off the coast of California. There's a reason why those fracture boundaries are there because of the incredible stress and strain. The plate boundary here can't keep up with the strain between the North American and the Pacific plate. Therefore, throughout time, it creates these other fracture boundaries off the area, inland and off the area. Man, this is a major seismically hazardous area that I would never want to live in. Unfortunately, we have millions of people down there, families that are going to be. I hope everyone's prepared. That's the thing I'm very hopeful for, is that everyone is prepared to experience a big earthquake activity event out here. It's a beautiful area. I've been down here myself. I was out here checking out the this area right about here, the Rancho Palos Verdes area. I was out here. Was it last year? I think it was last year here. I drove down here with Missy Mimi's investigating the landslide activity that's occurring around the Rancho Palos Verdes area. Right, we got these beautiful homes kind of slipping off there into the Pacific. Well, this area is built on landfill and other debris out there. So when rainfall occurs, this is all going to just slide away, slip sliding away. I don't remember who sung that song. Slip sliding away. I don't remember. Refresh my memory if you guys remember that. But it's. I almost feel like I'm here to, in my lifetime and at this specific point in time, at 2025, October 22nd, 2025, is just to express my concern out here for potential big earthquake activity. And it's not a forecast. It's not a warning. It is a warning to that extent. But I'm not saying, we're going to have a big one tonight. I don't need to say that. I really don't need to say that we're going to have a big one out here, because it will happen out here. The question is when. You cannot pinpoint an exact time or location when an earthquake will happen. That's just not possible. We've seen, I talked about this here a couple nights ago, of an individual there on Twitter talking about a big earthquake is guaranteed, right? Could you imagine me if I came out here and said, yes, folks, there's a big earthquake guaranteed to hit the San Andreas Fault tonight? Could you imagine the panic that would occur out there? I don't do that. I don't see how anyone can do that, because it's just not right. Because you can't say there's going to be a big earthquake guaranteed across San Francisco. That came to pass. That individual is still claiming that big earthquakes are going to happen. If you think about it, if you were to come out here every single day and say, hey, folks, there's a big earthquake going to happen in San Francisco today, for the next 50 years, eventually you're going to be right, and maybe one day you're going to be popular, and you might make the news. You might go viral. But it's shameful. It really is shameful. That's not something anyone should do, and that's something I will never do. But I do look at historical documents here. I look at the amount of time that has passed, where earthquake activity is occurring, And obviously, all that pressure is increasing here. Look at these 3 earthquakes right up against the San Andreas Fault. Fracture boundaries here. Activity is majorly increasing out there across the San Andreas Fault, folks. We got to be prepared. Not saying it's going to happen tonight. It may happen tonight, but guaranteed, that's a word I will never use unless, what's a word I would use, what's an instance I would use guaranteed for? I guarantee I will pick out 3 winners next month for a member drawing. How's that sound? Yes, because we already picked out 3 members. That's something I guarantee, and that's a promise I keep out there. So, but when you can say, when someone says there's a guarantee that there's a big earthquake in San Francisco, come on, that is straight up fear mongering, and that technically should be, that's might be along the lines of breaking the law. I don't know if that's against the law or not, but man. Guaranteed earthquake in San Francisco tonight. Really? I mean, come on. Let's use a little common sense out there. All right. Pretty good cluster along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault, but nothing big going on there for now. No guaranteed big earthquake. And the thing is, that's the least area I would expect a big earthquake to occur. They already had a decent earthquake out there in 1906. This area along San Francisco area northward is the least of my worries for a big earthquake. You want to talk about maybe a guarantee for earthquake here soon is the Parkfield section southward into the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. Those areas are mega overdue. Mega overdue. 1906 earthquake is fairly recent, so I'm not concerned about San Francisco. It's man, I don't want to talk about. Quite a few folks out there know who I'm talking about. All right, nothing major going on out there across the Pacific Northwest. Let's go ahead and check out the tremor maps here this evening, and see what we got going on. Wow, hello. Let's zoom in. I might need a magnifying glass here to spot this. 17 epicenters of tremor. That's a cutoff. That's a big drop, almost like the cryptocurrency market. Big drop going on there for tremor counts. You can barely see it, but it dropped off sharp there. Now, there's 2 things here that could be taking place here. Everything's locked and loaded. No tremor activity can occur. Maybe a Cascadia rupture is about ready to happen. Or the second option here is that pressure out here across the area has decreased due to circumstances here across the plate tectonic world. Western Pacific out here, maybe temporarily relieve strain out there across the Cascadia subduction zone, because when tremor activity occurs, when slow slip events occur across the Cascadia, that's a sign that the Juan de Fuca plate is further subducting underneath this area of the Pacific Northwest and Northern California. It's not occurring just because it's occurring strictly directly related to the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate. Okay, I'm going to show you guys here the GPS stations here across Port Orford area. This is just one region that's shown uptick, but they vary. Okay, hold on. Crescent City, Brookings. Hello, Brookings, Oregon. Beautiful area up there. I absolutely love that area. I've stayed up here in the last couple of years, right along the coast. I don't sleep well in this area. It doesn't matter if it's a $500 motel room or a $40 motel room. I don't sleep well in this area, strictly because of this. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to stress along the Cascadia. This is not a volcano getting ready to blow, right? If you've seen this at Yellowstone National Park, that type of uplift here in the last 20 years or so, I'd be thinking, man, this thing's about ready to pop. But that's not what's going on here. This is the Coast Range being elevated there, southern coast of Oregon, because of strictly and related to the Cascadia subduction zone. This whole area, you get this, the Cascadia fold and thrust belt, this whole area is building up. It's rising here because the Juan de Fuca plate is subducting underneath this area, and that's acting as a spring. Man, when this thing pops, when it finally goes out here, it's going to be a 9.0 earthquake or greater. This land will drop like a rock. And Brookings, Oregon, it's sad to say, but they'll drop a few feet. And if they're not below sea level at the current moment, they will be at that time. So it's definitely a scary scenario. You have to be informed on information out here. Brookings, Oregon, Harbor. This is a very dangerous area. Who would have thought, right? The Pacific Ocean is absolutely beautiful, but you got this fold and thrust belt right offshore, dude. It's man, crazy. The Earth is crazy, but without plate tectonics, we would be looking at a planet that's just flat, like Mars or elsewhere. But just be on guard. Please be on guard out here, because Brookings, Oregon could easily turn into a Japan type event back in 2011, right? That massive tsunami. That's just one area. The rest of the country, pretty quiet there, folks, for now. Let's go and take a look here at the Earthquake 3D globe. As I mentioned, a lot of uptick here across this area of the planet. It's very focused. It's focused here across the Costa Rica area where the 5.9 occurred, eastward, along the eastern area of the Caribbean plate, and southward. It's majorly on the uptick. Also up there along the Kamchatka area. Some activity here recently around the Papua New Guinea area. New Zealand 3.2. It's scattered. This is definitely scattered out here across the planet. But we do have to watch where these areas are increasing, and it's quite concerning out there across these middle point boundaries there between the current activity. Space weather activity here. I literally lost my mouse pad, so I'm trying to do this here on the computer desk. That just doesn't work as well. Notice a couple sea flare activity here, events in the last couple hours. Nothing big, but we do have an active region out there across the eastern limb. Just getting a beautiful glimpse of it. It does look quite active. Man, look at this. Wow. I really got to blow this up just a little bit more so you guys can see. Take a look at that massive area out there on the eastern limb. That looks fairly complex, at least from this area. Gonna have to watch this here in the coming days. I did not mean to blow up Solar Ham that big. Sorry, Kevin. Definitely sorry. I'll just deflate this a little bit. Kevin, oh man, he's a good guy. He runs this site here called Solar Ham. I do like him. I've donated to him numerous times in the past. He keeps us updated, right? In an informational type setup here. Very easy to understand and read for the typical observer. But we do have a fairly active area out there on the eastern limb. Unnamed. We'll get a better glimpse of that tomorrow, but it looks like things are starting to stir up, and that's strictly because of that area out there on the eastern limb. Right now, very minimal threat, but these are just for what's facing the Earth facing side here. This will raise up, obviously, as the newer area comes into view. No major solar flare activity or aurora activity occurring for now. Let's see what we got here. As far as the storm system out here across the west coast goes, I'm really super disappointed here. A week ago, we were talking about a major atmospheric river slamming into Northern California northward. we're only going to get probably about a tenth of an inch of rain. Hello, I could spray my hose out there in the field and probably get more rain than what's coming up here. So, super disappointed. It's early in the season, I get it, but man, it bugs me. It makes me want to just go crazy because I'm a big weather fan. I like it when we get extreme events going on, and that was a big disappointment because the Storm Prediction Center, Climate Prediction Center was calling for a high risk for precipitation out here across the West Coast. And we're lucky if we get a couple sprinkles out here from the storm. It's hello crazy. ECMWF model showing roughly about the same. It's disappointing there. It really is. So for the folks up there in the mountains and whatnot, you'll get some rain. But here in the valley, we're dependent not on the west to east motion here because that produces that big time rain shadow out there across the Sacramento Valley. I mean, if we got every storm system that came in from west to east, we'd be gypped all year long. But we have to have the low pressure systems that kind of come in here off the coast and work their way up northward here, funneling in that moisture there through the Sacramento Valley. Otherwise, man, it's pretty much like a Death Valley scenario out here, a major Death Valley. Sacramento down the San Joaquin Valley could be considered a major Death Valley just because of the mountains that surround this area. But thankfully, we get some storm systems that don't primarily go west to east out here. Otherwise, man, I'm moving out of here soon. I don't like it. I don't want to live in the desert. I will move somewhere where it rains. All right. Hello, Solomon Islands. What's going on out there in the Solomon Islands? Let's take a look here. Nothing according to the USGS map. I really wish it was a little bit different with the USGS. I really wish that they would produce more accurate data when it comes to international activity. That earthquake there on the Solomon Islands, pretty close to the vicinity of that seismograph station. That is striking at about 0520, so just about 15 minutes or so ago. I don't think it's this 5.2 down here because that, if you look, that 5.2 came in at let's see here, 5.2 at 9:07. So that's way further. That's way further than 15 minutes ago. So there's definitely an earthquake occurring around the Solomon Islands there, not being reported yet, even on the EMSC side of things. I don't think it's at 3.9. No way 3.9 would show up all across the Solomon Islands there. But it's just definitely some uptick going on. We'll continue to watch this here, folks. Broader activity taking place. Southern California finally getting in on some of the moving going on. But, my big concern here, unfortunately, is a big uptick across the Caribbean. Look around the eastern side here. Big uptick going on. Puerto Rico, southeastward. That's when they say that one area is not related to the other, that's completely false. I look at this map here and see a strong relationship here between the pressure that's increasing in this area and the concern that's building out here. So watch that closely. Very, very closely, folks. All right, let's see what else we got. I think I'm going to call it, folks. I'm going to call it. Tomorrow is Thursday. Garbage is out. Recyclable is out. I'm always trying to remind myself of things to do for tomorrow because I hate missing garbage days. Not good. Definitely not good. Have a good one. I appreciate every single one of you guys out there. Have a good night. And comment here in the next couple minutes, and I'll respond. Have a good one.